Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of the Gauntlet, I want to talk about Mythic Horse Sheep. But first, I wanted to address one of the grievances aired on Monday. Stephen McHargue had a grievance that I published these videos at 1 on the East Coast, instead of noon, when East Coast viewers have their lunch break, and wanted to know why. Well, I'm one of those East Coast people, and every once in a blue moon, I may or may not be racing against the clock trying to get a video edited during said lunch break. But it's a great point, so I'm going to try an experiment. For the rest of the Gauntlet, my videos will be published at noon Eastern Time, and we'll see how I like it. If it works stress-free, we'll keep it. If not, I'll restore the original time slot because I value never being late. But back to the current team. Mythic Horses are one of the top tier factions and proof that Swarm factions are incredibly strong. Most of their natural partners are Swarm factions, but that is a bit above the level that I'm seeking for March Smashness. So what do you do with them? Give them a random other pairing to keep them in line? No, I wanted a partner who works well with the horses and gives them a specific direction without being over the top, and the sheep fit that criteria. There's also the question, do the Mythic Horses bring what the sheep need? I think that they do. With the Mythic Horses, they have straightforward minions. Pinky is a 2 who is easily a 3 for above average power. Seastar is essentially a free minion because it can easily chain into an extra minion. Starlight is extremely powerful and she brings some devastating power drops. Rainbow might be the one area for improvement. Rainbow is a card draw engine that does not provide immediate value. Each minion you play hastens the disruption of that engine. But movement helps with that. Rainbow only wants the minion to be played there, not to stay there. For the sheep, the very nature of the flock is that their strength is in numbers. The Mythic Horses give you the extra plays that you need to start establishing your flock. The sheep can also prevent buildup on bases by auto-scattering, and though this can backfire, the Mythic Horses have the card diversity to pull off the sheep strategy. If I play a black sheep, I can play Togetherness Power to play another minion on the same base, which could be Rainbow. Black sheep would scatter, leaving me with my power split to avoid power creep, but I could still draw a card with Rainbow. Once I start drawing cards, I can use the free movement of the Mythic Horses to spread out further, knowing I can easily move cards. Friendship Power can help the flock ensure that you always have 2 minions. When you move a minion off of Rainbow's base, if you had 2 from a previous turn, you can send them both into another base without wasting a card. Or, if you use You Shall Pass, without wasting an action. The free action movement of the sheep is great for setting up Seastar because it allows you to pivot onto a base. A base that has no minions right now may have 1, which allows Seastar to trigger, which could allow Starlight to trigger for more power growth, or a black sheep. Seastar highlights the fact that the black sheep are all above average power, which makes them great terminal minion drops as long as they don't move off the base. Given that the sheep tend to consolidate on bases, but still are being split into subgroups, they are great for super future space armor power. The sheep are specifically designed that they can swarm on a base via movement, but they don't have to. Playing many minions with your extra plays, moving them around to avoid power creep, and using super future space armor power for extra power is a long-term strategy, but a very effective one, and it's hard to defend against because no base is advancing quickly. With all the free movement that the sheep have, which includes their actions, their rams, and Little Bo Peep, it's easy to set up super future space armor power to send a base into an extreme overpayment. But you have a crazy full sail style play, and it's risky, but it does work. In my teaching power video, I described it as a card that gets more powerful the less you need it. But with the sheep, there's a crazy opportunity if you are feeling bold. If you have enough minions and enough of a lead, you may want to take a chance on revealing a flock and playing it on the scoring base if you have a black sheep there, or any small minion if you still need that power. Because you play a minion, any black sheep will move off and all flock will follow. Normally, this can be bad, like when you are victimized by a shinobi. But if you are doing it intentionally, you can send a lot of power, boosted power, into another base and score that as a surprise attack. Because of the great power drops that this team can bring, Overpayment is really likely, and if you could win the base at a much more efficient rate and possibly score another, that will prove to be a great advantage. Even if you just trade a pinky for a black sheep and a couple of flock, it might still be worth it. I think that the flocks are great targets for encouragement power because the flock is meant to be the one moving to your true target base. This allows you to avoid the power creep on a base you want to win while allowing the flock to stay on a higher breakpoint base, but with great power activation potential. Additionally, if you could achieve the teaching power play, then the additional power stays in play, which is extremely useful for breaking the second base. With this team, it doesn't matter that much which minion gets the extra power, and enabling your flock to potentially avoid destruction is a further benefit since the black sheep are already power 4, pinkies are easily a 3, and C-Star is more of a burst minion. If you can trigger Rainbow often, then this team can have fairly good card draw. The Ram is perfect for Rainbow because it can immediately move itself off, drawing a card and still providing value by removing a minion. Little Bo Peep can also pull minions off to keep Rainbow's base light. Rainbow might be an occasion where I like shearing because it can nullify the power creep you added on a base while adding a second card. You also have sharing power, which is not difficult to achieve as long as you aren't relying on black sheep for presence there. However, there is potential for the flock to be disruptive on sharing power as well. The sheep can draw an additional 4 cards from their standard actions, which can help sustain the mythic horses and all of their extra plays. But the sheep also bring an extreme X factor with their cloning abilities, which can be really hit or miss. Played early, to follow or not can be very powerful if you have a great idea of what you are getting. Because the discard pile is public knowledge, you have information on your chances, especially if there is only one card, which makes it deterministic. Opponents need to be wary of this and avoid playing their most powerful action as their first action. Wood for sheep can be impossible to predict, but sometimes the results are fun. In one exhibition game, it stole Microbot Alpha on the first turn. The card offered in return was Counting Sheep, which was played to Alpha's base, and Microbot Alpha would trigger Counting Sheep every turn, but the card controllers were reversed, making it very difficult to keep track of the power. But the steal really hurt robot vampires, so crazy things can happen. But, since Wood for Sheep lets you choose what card you give, Friendship Power is an interesting candidate. While the sheep do like the recurring movement, I'm not sure that they need it, and if an opponent were to play this card, it would go back into your hand, not theirs, because of the ownership rules. But the great wild card on this team is going to be Hello Dolly, which can copy an action played by your opponent. The sheep advanced last year because they copied Super Future Space Armor Power, creating an unexpected solo base on an opponent turn. Kaiju Innsmouth's magical run almost ended when Hello Dolly copied Wade Through the Buildings and destroyed a ton of power on the last base. You need to be aware at all times that Hello Dolly is around and anticipate what would happen if an action were played. Because of this team's card draw, it's only a matter of time before they get it, so baiting a Hello Dolly play early may be the best course of action. I am not looking forward to the crazy timing situations that this card can create, or the pacing problems since you have to wait for reactions. This isn't a true swarm-on-swarm deck, which have a tendency to be broken, but the sheep allow mythic horses to approach swarm from a different perspective. The usual anti-swarm strategies tend to apply, but this team is much less susceptible to Eliza because the big plays can be achieved with fewer cards. They have talent-based movement and mass movement, which tends to get around Eliza, and C-Star plus Starlight is still very strong. I think the sheep struggle for factions that are so self-synergistic that their cards do not make sense in isolation. The Vikings tend to have the same problem, but the Vikings are more likely to be played on your timing, whereas the sheep cards are not. For example, when I played Ghost against Sheep, you can try to copy Shady Deal, but it doesn't trigger because you do not have 2 cards in your hand. The prerequisite is not on the playing of the card, but on the trigger of the ability. I've also played them against Rockstars, where stealing Guest Star is effectively useless. Each matchup will have to be evaluated thoroughly to see if the cloning will work, if it will work at all. This team also suffers from a lack of recursion that makes destruction very potent. They rely so much on minion quantity that if you start to attack that, their power is greatly reduced. They have no way to protect their minions from destruction other than persistent power increases, which always has a chance of being exploited for potential power creep. Speaking of exploitation, I only mention this because I've been doing it a lot to players recently. Counting Sheep is the very type of card that can backfire because I, as the opponent, have full control over when it triggers, and it's obligatory, and you may be supplying power that I need to break the base without pushing you into first. This team only has one special, and it's a peculiar one at that, which I'd rather save for that type of play that I talked about. But I never like to doubt Mythic Horses because they bring a good blend of card draw, power, movement, and extra plays. Throw in the Sheep's potential to fill in unexpected gaps, and this team will make every match exciting. What do you think of Mythic Horse Sheep? Let me know in the comments. Next week will be really exciting because we'll be talking about 4 factions where I like all 3 of the internal pairings you can form, and I have a surprising story about the selections I made. After those picks are revealed, you should be able to piece together the remaining teams, although you still might find one of the teams to be surprising. That's it for this team. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.